Well, good Wednesday evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bowling with the Fef, a platform for you to share your unique bowling story live on our YouTube channel. Been a week since I last rapped at you, but glad to be back and bringing some more bowling content onto the internet. And we have a heck of a show tonight, one that I've been waiting for quite a while, and I can't wait to get right into it. So let's get started. You know, today was the beginning of the 2022 PBA League. It's in Portland, Maine, and they had a seeding round today where we found that the Portland Lumberjacks, the two-time defending champs of the event, are going to be top seeded when they do the Anthony Division Finals. That's at 7 o'clock tonight, Central Time on FS1. They got that top seed after getting by the Milwaukee PBR Pounders by just 7 pins. So some excitement at the end of that seeding round earlier today, and sure to be some more excitement tonight on that show. You can tune in after you're done watching this whole thing, of course, but obviously some high interest in the PBA League over there in Portland, Maine. Well, as I said, today is a fantastic show that we have lined up for you. I don't want to fail to mention that this show is brought to you by Chip Magnet Salsa. They're a huge supporter of Bowling with the Fef. Can't do what I do without them. Chip Magnet's a family business right over there in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, distributing quality salsas, relishes, and much more to stores in 38 states and Canada. If you want that exquisite flavor of Chip Magnet Salsa, let your fingers do the walking. Go to chipmagnetsalsa.com and place your order right there. They will be happy to hook you up with some of the finest salsa on the planet. Chip Magnet, raise your snack standards. Well, as I said, this is a guest tonight that I've been looking forward to for a long time, and he's been challenged several times on this show. So I want to kind of reset that before we get into it. Take a look.
You'd be missing out on a lot of history if you didn't invite Gordon Vadakin, and you can see him right here. That's a young Gordon Vadakin.
I'm going to nominate Coach V.
Okay.
Gordon Vadakin.
I know Gordon would do a fantastic job and could really dive into the history of bowling.
She was just inducted into the Wichita State Sports Coaching Hall of Fame, not for bowling, just for the university.
That would be my challenge, would be Gordon Vadakin. I'd hope he would consider coming on your show and sharing a little more Wichita history with you.
Well, fortunately, not only has he considered it, but he is here with our show that we're calling Coach V. Proud to present Gordon Vadakin, Wichita, Kansas. You name it in college bowling, he's done it. The longtime Wichita State University head coach, 18 national team championships, 9 individual national championships. Gordon, it's a pleasure to have you tonight on Bowling with the Fef.
Well, Fef, it's great to be here. It's always fun to do one of these. Although this is my first podcast, so I'm a rookie at this. So you're going to have to help me out here, okay?
Oh, for sure. No, it's my honor, and really glad that that you agreed to come on, and excited to hear your story. I want to get into something that's relatively current because you're about to go into the Kansas Sports Hall of Fame, not just the Bowling Hall of Fame, but the Sports Hall of Fame. And this is a place that's honored people like George Brett, Wilt Chamberlain, Barry Sanders, Dr. James Naismith, and many others. Tell us how you found out about this and what it feels like.
Well, this is an interesting Hall of Fame. It's one that I think some of the folks that are going in here this year, there's Roy Williams, the longtime basketball coach at North Carolina, and also at KU, Kansas University before that. And it's a nice group of people. Some I do not know personally, but some big names are in there. So it's our first chance to get a bowler in the state Hall of Fame for here for Kansas, and it's a tough one to get in because you have to be retired to do it. Okay, and if you're in as an athlete, as you know, you can bowl quite a long time in our sport. And for their rules, you can't really be bowling anymore if you want to go in as a bowler. So we have a lot of very good candidates in our state, as you might imagine, but they're still competing either as older players or younger players, but they've done some amazing things. So I'm happy that we've broken the ice here a little bit, perhaps for some more bowlers after me.
Yeah. When we spoke on the phone, it was, to schedule this show, it was during a PBA telecast. And I remember you telling me that you were looking forward to seeing your guys compete. I think Chris Prather was on that particular show.
Mm-hmm.
But, we're into the PBA league now, as I said at the top, and a lot of shockers are involved in this competition. You saw great performances today out of Packy Hanrahan, out of Mitch Hoope. What's it like for you to see those guys performing on this stage?
Well, I think it's what's gratifying to me is they have team play skills. They learned them, I think, largely in our program. And because of that, there may be more in demand when we get into this PBA league. And that's a big tribute to their learning when they were at Wichita State University. We teach team play and communication and support at a high level. And that's something that I don't think if you've just bowled professionally, you just looked at it as an individualistic sport, those aren't really looked at as skills, but they are. Team play skills are skills, real skills, support, communication, being able to understand that you affect the next teammate in the lineup, either negatively or positively. You get too withdrawn inside yourself on a bad shot, let's say. Well, that's what the message is you're sending the next guy in the lineup. I'm awful, or look how frustrated I am, or look how angry I am. And so that mirrors into that next teammate. You don't want that. You want them inspired. Even if you make a mistake, you got to switch it off quick and give it to that next teammate. So I think I'm really gratified that we've got a little bit of understanding out there in the PBA that these Wichita State guys can play team, and they can play it at a fairly high level.
Yeah. It's interesting what you said there about kind of the mental aspect about this. You want to be positive. You don't want to be depressed with yourself or angry. You want to have that short memory. And we talk a lot now about the mental game, a lot more than maybe we did 10, 15, 20 years ago. But I guess, do you find that with that comes more of the bad stuff that we're trying to beat down? Or do you think this renewed emphasis on the mental side of bowling is making a dent in that for the better?
Oh, I think we're all amateurs, and at least in bowling, we've been more amateuristic with understanding sports psychology and the mental game. It's a very important part of our game, maybe more important in our sport than many other sports, because wow, just the sheer number of adjustments that you can make in our game between wrist and hand positions and releases and lofts and angles and ball choices. Confusion is a big part of our sport. When you get all of those things on the menu, okay, what release am I going to pick? What ball am I going to choose? What angle am I going to use? Am I going to have more speed? Am I going to loft it a little bit? If you don't have a way to compartmentalize that and work through it, you're going to be pretty fried at some point in that competition. So again, that's something that relates to team play very strongly, but at the same time, it's something as an individual player, you need training in this. These professional athletes need this training just as much as college kids need it. Everybody needs to be able to understand how they bowl best. And I've never really bowled best. Anybody bowl their best when they're angry or depressed, or it's mostly happiness and joy. It sounds corny, but that's how we play the best. So do we let good scores make us happy and joyful? Or do we just choose to be like that going in, irregardless of how I bowl? There's the dangerous player. There's the player that can play in the here and now, can shake off bad shots, can play at an elite level.
Yeah. None of us end up starting from that point, though. We all have to start somewhere, and it's usually from a beginner's mentality, a beginner's physical skill level, and I'm sure you were the same. So tell us about how, when, and why you got introduced and got into the sport of bowling.
Well, as a young kid, and I didn't start as young as some do, but I was my brother's about 4 or 5 years older than me, and he started bowling and he loved the game. And so the initial goal was just to get as good as him, if not better. So it was it was a sibling rivalry. And I think at some point, I don't know when that was, I think I did eclipse him. And he also was an undergraduate student at Wichita State with an aerospace engineering degree. But I decided that I would go to Wichita State. It made sense for me to do that. And then the bowling team, I didn't even know about the bowling team when I went there, believe it or not. And this was in the early 70s. So my freshman year, I wasn't part of that squad and decided to join up in my sophomore year. And I'm so glad I did, because collegiate bowling is the most, I don't know what to say about it. It hooked me deep. That part of our game, youth bowling didn't do that, but league bowling didn't do it. But with collegiate bowling, holy moly, that's the best of our game is collegiate bowling. That brings out the best part of the sport of bowling, in my mind.
Yeah. When Brent initially challenged you, Brent Bowers, to be on the show, he said you'd have things to say about the history of bowling in Wichita. And this is going to be kind of a vague question, but despite the collegiate part of Wichita and that whole community, I mean, what makes that bowling community there in that town so special?
Well, we had leadership at the association level and at the proprietor level, where they were dialed in both locally and nationally with some of the centers that we had here in Wichita. Frank and Kathy DeSocio were owners of 3 centers recently purchased by Bolero here in town. But they, very recent, like in the last week, but they for a long time were big supporters of the PWA, the PBA, brought in a lot of high-level tournaments into this city, including the collegiate championships 4 or 5 times. And you keep exposing the community to that level of play. It does what you want it to do. Bowling itself would become something I want to be involved and compete at a high level. And this is anybody. Well, anybody sees that, and you're just conditioned through repetition. This bowling is challenging. It's something I can learn. It's something that I want to get better at, and I want to maybe even try this professional bowling or even below that college bowling. So I think we're very lucky in this city. We've had a long history of exposure through tournament competition to everybody in the city. And as it's created a fairly savvy bowling population here, one that watched these events and learned from them and became more knowledgeable. And that truly, Pfeff, is one of the strengths of this community, and it's one of the things that we do, and you even do perhaps with the show us a little bit, is you teach through this medium. And teaching and learning about the higher levels of the game, guess what? That's what hooks people to bowl for their lives. Oh, I didn't know this about ball surfaces or lane oil. I didn't know it was out there. So when they start learning about this, they're hooked even deeper because there's more to learn. I didn't know that. Yeah, we can compete at a recreational level, of course, for those that don't want to know all of that. But when those people start to watch this and see it on TV and see it in their centers here in Wichita, wow, I want to learn more about bowling. There's something to this. And then there's a lifetime of learning, as we know, past that point. You never master this. You only attempt to. It's that much work to be really proficient at the sport of bowling.
Yeah. As you were coming up in the competition side of the sport and, like you said, kind of making your way into that collegiate arena where you found the best of it, did you have coaches? Did you have sources of that learning? I
would say no. I was pretty self-taught, and And my physical game pretty much shows that. It's pretty bizarre. So, it's just learned as I went. And I wish I had someone to guide me, that's for sure. But I worked awful hard with what I had and dove into the mental side of the game and became what I'd like to say is somewhat a student of the game, and tried to, I don't have a real rich background in terms of coaching or being exposed to great coaches early on. It wasn't until we got to college bowling that I got exposed to a higher level of coaching when we started that.
Yeah. Eric Littig is chiming in, says, "Hi, Coach V. Fantastic to hear your words of wisdom." I would agree, even though we've just started. And he says you're dead on. Collegiate bowling represents everything that is great about our sport.
It definitely does. There's a long time supporter of college bowling, and that was a guy named Jim Otterstrom. Jim Otterstrom used to work for Brunswick. He was the marketing director for that company. And I'm going to paraphrase a quote he said one time. He said, anytime I get depressed about what might be going on in bowling, I simply go to a college bowling tournament. And then I'm inspired again with the greatness of what this sport of bowling is all about, because it's all there. It's team play. It's great shot making. It's clutch bowling. It's great adjustments. It's great communication. It's camaraderie. It's everything wrapped in with a little bow tie of what's great about the sport.
Yeah, and energy like you'll never experience
Oh my gosh,
any other bowling venue or platform.
Nothing like it.
Yeah. So as you found your way, you mentioned kind of self-taught and all that, but were there people you looked up to? Did you watch the pros? Did you find amateurs in that area that kind of provided, at least a role model for you from a distance?
Well, as I went through my 4 years of intercollegiate competition, I was left with the decision, what do I want to do? Do I want to pursue this individually as something? And I really felt like, no, I'm probably not good enough to really do something professionally. So I didn't take that route, but I still was deeply hooked with our program, college bowling. So I hung around in the Wichita State program. I was still in school. In fact, I was on the 10-year plan to get the degree, because at that point, it was 1977 or thereabouts, and I was dating my future wife, who happened to be on the Shocker women's team. There's a number of marriages that have happened out of this program over the years, which is an unofficial statistic, but we were one of the happy ones. And here we are, 43 years into this. So, 2 kids and everything. But at the same time, I wanted to stick with the program. Paul Wallachek was the coach then. And if Wallachek sounds familiar, his son Lonnie bowled professionally, won several titles. And Lonnie bowled on the team too when I was coaching. So I hung in there and ended up managing our rec center in the student union, the campus activity center at the time, now the Radigan Student Center. It's been renamed. But at that point, I was the manager of that facility, and we had lanes and pool tables and arcade games and a food and beverage operation. And part of the job description of the manager was to coach the intercollegiate women and men's teams out in competition. So here's something that I discovered about myself. I didn't like to, how do I want to say it? I didn't settle very well. I didn't like, no matter how the business did, or how the bowling team did, good or bad, I was always looking for something more. I was always looking to improve it in every way I possibly could. That's just kind of how I was wired. And that's what we did. But in doing that, as our business grew, as our success of our bowling program grew, and I understand Paul Wallachek he was the coach of the very first women's team. My wife was on that team. It was the very first national championship Wichita State had ever won in any sport. So it was a big deal. And he went on to coach the 76 team, which got second. And then another coach took over and won in 1977 with the women. And then I coached the women and men in 1978, and the women won. So we won 3 of the first 4 women's intercollegiate championships. Well, if I wasn't hooked earlier than that, I was deeply hooked then. And I knew that we had a sport on our hands here, Fef. We had something where these players needed a great experience. They needed really full-time coaching. They needed coaching at a high level. And to my knowledge at that point in time, nationally or internationally, there really wasn't any paid full-time coaching anywhere. And unfortunately, that was the case. So I ended up working real hard. I had a group of people that I worked with, and if I did anything, I created a little bit of belief there where, he's right. Let's figure out a way to make this happen, and let's get better at this every season that we have. And so that's what I created. We had volunteer coaches at the time, and they were bought in, and we worked very hard at it. We worked tremendously hard. It's probably similar to what Sean Walkner has done for so well up at University of Wisconsin-Whitewater. He doesn't get paid. He just has a men's team. I had both. I managed the rec center and also coached the team. So it got to the point where something had to give, because I got married in 79, had kids in 84, 87. So I was just constantly on the move, taking care of the business and the bowling program. And at a point there, I just decided I've got to do something else, because I'm not able to keep up. I just couldn't do it. So there's more to that story, but the main thing is actually the university president came to me in 1996 and said, we want you to be the full-time head coach. So I basically ran the business facility and tried to coach the team on the side for almost 20 years. And then it was offered to me the full-time job. Well, of course, I took it. I was able to have a full-time assistant coach, which was a guy named Pat Henry at the time. And Pat and I coached the team for a couple of years. And very shortly after that, we had Mark Lewis on board as the longtime assistant coach and now the current director of the bowling program at Wichita State. But what we did in the first couple of 3 years, paid full-time to do this, we probably learned more about how to do this than we did in probably the previous 20 years. We learned that much. We did a lot of things that weren't right, but we learned from them. And a lot of times I just think that process, a trial and error process of trying things and seeing what needs to be fixed and improved, we improved a lot of things. So we had a head start in the sense of making mistakes and learning how to find a better way to do them. So that is, I think that to this day is still part of the fabric of the coaching staff at Wichita State. They're still trying to find better ways to do things than they did the previous year, if they won national titles or not.
Yeah. It's incredible that you come in with that kind of dominance on the women's side, but I would think that, taking on that kind of role, taking on a program like that, you'd kind of want to make it your own in a sense, maybe a little or a lot, depending on your personality.
Right.
Was there a point early on when you either kind of felt that within yourself or saw it happen?
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. We were very successful with our women's program to start with. I mean, they had a second and 3 firsts. I think in 1979, their 4th year, they got second again in the nationals. And so people would come to me and say, gosh, do you have a men's team? And wow, of course we did, but we just weren't very good. And I was part of that team, and I know we weren't very good because I was part of it. So what ended up happening is that became a goal. Now we're not going to we're going to keep the success with the women's team, but we're going to make this men's team successful. So in their first trip to the national championship in 1980, which was right up in your neck of the woods in Milwaukee, we won the national title in our very first trip there. So, and after that, it's been pretty darn successful, more successful than, any other intercollegiate men's team, which of course we're very proud of. But we didn't want to do it at the sacrifice of the women. The women had to remain as talented, if not better, than the men did. So that was my mission initially, to elevate the men's team to that kind of stature that the women had achieved early on in the process.
Yeah. Here's some of the proof of that success. What I heard from Coach Walkner. He said that Gordon is the most respected coach in the history of college bowling. You made Wichita State the premier destination for college bowling. Wichita State is to college bowling what Alabama is to football or what Duke is to basketball. If I had told you that your colleagues were going to say that, or your opponents were going to say that somewhere along the line, would you believe me?
It's kind of, I don't know, embarrassing to think about it that way. I don't think of what we did as anything special. I mean, we just stuck our nose to the grindstone. We evolved with the times. We worked hard. We fixed things that we thought could be better, and are still doing that. And it became, we didn't fear making mistakes. We knew we'd learn from them. So we just took that and ran with it, and we continue to do that. So I don't think of myself as anything like that. I am pretty, those who know me know that I don't accept praise very good, because I just don't feel that it was, and it's never, how many cliches are there? It's never about one person. It's about a whole lot of people that makes an organization successful. And we know this. Somebody gets, I guess, glorified or put on the pedestal, but it's incorrect. There's dozens of people that help make this program successful, and I was just a part of it. That's really all it comes down to.
Sure. And you mentioned, some of the mistakes that, you or the program made along the way, but college bowling, I get the sense, if nothing else, because of the age of ITCs and how that really had just started when you were getting into coaching. I think of college bowling as a pretty young sport, relatively speaking. And there isn't really, whether it's an older sport or especially a younger sport, there isn't a manual to figure out how to do this effectively, how to be a great coach, how to convince your guys or your ladies to be great players. So how do you go about, kind of doing that without the guidance?
That's a great question. We didn't have anywhere to look, within college bowling. I guess you have to realize that it's not because we didn't have respect for other programs. It's we weren't doing it to a level we could do it. We knew that. We knew there had to be better ways to do it. So we kind of set up a goal to be the best intercollegiate sports program anywhere. Well, that's pretty lofty, because that includes all the sports that came before us. You start looking at those legacies, whether it be Duke and basketball, or you pick anyone you want. I mean, but it became obvious that we needed to look at those role models. We needed to look at those sports and decide that was what we needed to emulate. That's what we needed to follow. What are they doing? Because we want to have longevity. We want to have success over a long period of time. What do they do? To players, you attract great players, and they create teams, and teams create great programs, and then great programs create, after a long time, they create legacy. They create tradition. We wanted to be considered one of those programs. Not that we did that intentionally off the bat, but if we're going to improve every year, well, gosh, we have to have silly things like a mission statement. We have to have goals and objectives. We have to have values and beliefs. We have to have codes of conduct. We have those kind of things, and we didn't know those things when we started. We had to learn. We didn't know we needed to have team captains. Why do they have team captains? We didn't do that. And of course, we paid the penalty, because by not having team captains, you don't have a conduit to the players. The coaches can't get the job done completely. And I don't want to offend any college bowling programs that don't have team captains. That's not the goal here. But it was something necessary. It's something that every other major sport has. There must be a reason. That's what we looked at. So we looked at NCAA. We looked at high-level sports, and what did they do? And we tried to study that and learn from them and emulate. That's what we attempted to do, Phil.
Yeah. And I guess one of the words that, as you were searching for those words, one of the ones that I'd put on it is culture. It seems
Right.
like you have a tight culture there.
Mhm.
And in past interviews, I've heard you mention the three pillars: work ethic, learning, and loyalty.
Yes.
So if you didn't have anywhere immediately around you to look, where'd you find that stuff? The three pillars.
Those three things were learned the hard way. We learned that if we had a successful athlete or a highly unsuccessful athlete, they either had those three qualities or did not have them. It's hard to explain it, but everything came back to those. This part of our program philosophy. If you've got a tremendous work ethic and a deep desire to learn, and you're unwaveringly loyal to the bowling team and the bowling program and to your teammates and coaches, you're going to just get as good as you possibly can get, not just in bowling, but in your classes. Classes are huge at our place. Academic success is a huge thing. We're greedy. Those people that do well in class, guess what? Work ethic and learning are very much a part of your academics as much as they are your sport. So if we attracted great students, they had those two things almost pre-wired into them. So we wanted those great workers and learners because they're going to do good in class, not so we just didn't have to worry about them. It wasn't that. It's because they're going to work, they're going to learn on the lanes. And loyalty is going to come from those two things, I think. And if we have those things happen, we can have a very special team. We can have a very special athlete going forward. One that continues to learn, that continues to work, that continues to be loyal. And that was the athlete we wanted to attract. And that's the culture we wanted to create in Shocker Bowling.
Sure. With such demand for the program, for students, prospective students to get on the team or teams, however you have it configured, you got to have tryouts. That's something that I didn't really experience in my collegiate experience because I went to smaller schools. But I wanted to kind of get a sense for what that process is like. So I hit up one of the other former student athletes, Jordan Ross, who's here in the Eau Claire area. He said they were super in-depth and fun. He said there's a whole bunch of different patterns. Skills challenge. He got to bowl with some current pros. And he said there were a ton of different bowling seminars, from drilling knowledge to mentality and mental preparation. When you're having a tryout for a year, for a new season, what are you looking for in these guys, in these young ladies, besides who can knock down the most pins, which is the obvious?
Well, tryouts. I mean, this is our longevity enabled us to learn things. We used to have a straight tryout. That's what made our team. You tried out. It was maybe total pins knocked down. And we picked a number, how many guys, how many girls we wanted to have on our squad. And that was the team. It was pretty black and white. Yes, we had a variety of patterns. We did track some statistics for the athletes to evaluate themselves in those early days. But it became pretty obvious, if we're going to use sport as a model here, gosh, I don't think North Carolina basketball has an open tryout for all of the guys on their team that they scholarship in, right? That's not a sport model. We quickly learned that. So we needed to, what we would call pre-select players. As we evolved in this process, we pre-selected a number of players. Really, the majority of the team was pre-selected. And what most good programs, they might have an open tryout, right, in another sport, where they might fill a few team spots in that manner. Well, that's exactly what we ended up evolving into. Once again, more of a sport model, not a college bowling tryout model by and large. But don't kid yourself. The tryout was brutal. We had brutal patterns out there, and anyone who's gone through that will tell you that challenged me to my core. I can't hit the pocket. What do I do? Well, I better make spares, or my score is going to be just terrible. So spare shooting, pocket percentage, first ball, average pinfall. I mean, there were probably a dozen different stats we looked at. We even had scoring partners that tracked the accuracy of the players, because we all know what that bowling game was like, where it became very accurate and you better put shots on line. And I'm happy to say college bowling is a lot of sport patterns, right? It's very difficult. it's quite frankly, in my opinion, it's way more difficult than the professional tour. I think some of the professionals complain about college bowling. Well, it's not real. You're not going to be on this heart of patterns when you get out and bowl on the professional tour or in high-level amateur bowling. Well, guess what? I think this prepares them more for those higher levels. They're not expecting to find huge areas out there they can throw their ball. They've got to be shot makers. They've got to have solid fundamentals. They've got to have mental skills. They've got to be able to walk out there and, yes, expose a pattern that's easier. But I think most people will tell you, if I'm used to hitting a board out there and putting the ball down a line, depending on how you want to look at it, I think I can probably put a ball in an area a little bit better too. And it's probably going to help me on the tougher patterns. So it was tough. Tryouts were tough. We did a physical test, 2-mile run, 2 minutes of push-ups and 2 minutes of setups, max reps, and that played into their tryout success. So fitness was involved in this. Just everything you can imagine. It's a tough process. Well, guess what? Life is not easy. Making this team is not an easy cakewalk. It's not a piece of cake. So when you went through that, you knew if you were put up on a piece of paper on the day of open selections, you did something special and you feel good about it.
Yeah. How about potential? I listened to an interview you did on the Storm Collegiate Spotlight podcast in October of 2013.
Oh, wow.
And Coach K asked you about some of the players to look for in the upcoming season.
Mm-hmm.
The ones you mentioned are Laura Plazas, Caitlin Tam, Dasha Kovalova, Matt McNeil, and Francois Lavoie. Now, we've seen Plazas on TV this year in the PWBA. Kovalova has won majors, has shot 300 on TV. McNeil has had the success in the Open Championships and now in the industry with Storm. And Lavoie has 2 majors to his credit.
Right.
How did you know? How did you, where is that potential evident to you in a player?
Well, again, I don't want to make this simplistic, but it comes back to those 3 things you talked about. It's that work ethic, learning, and loyalty. It's those guys. Those are the ones that demonstrated deeply that they had the belief that if they worked hard enough and they were more interested in learning than anything else, what's the opposite of that? You could get all caught up in outcomes. I've got to make the team. I've got to be on an all-star team, top 5. We have to win the tournament. I don't have a hell of a lot of control over those outcomes, but I do have a whole lot of control day to day on how much I work and how much I learn. And those that got it, and I'm going to be honest with you, that not a lot of people get that. We're really caught up in instant gratification and caught up in lack of work ethic and lack of really putting our nose to the grindstone and saying, this is long game stuff. This is not going to be how quick can I get to the PBA tour and be successful. And granted, there are a few exceptions to that, but college bowling is, at least at our place, was about you got to learn it, and you got to learn it from the ground up. Most people don't have a clue coming into college bowling what really elite level skills are. They just don't know. They think they do, but let's be honest, the lane conditions delude them into that. It's like shooting fish in a barrel to shoot big games and strike and honor scores. And the real game's hard. And the easy conditions shut you down. You don't work on versatility and adjustments. You simply think that this is bowling. I'm striking a lot, and I don't need to shoot spares because I'm gonna throw 3 in a row to make up for that 1 or 2 missed spare. That's not the real world. The real world is it's hard, and you have to learn the game from the ground up.
Yeah, that can be a tough pill for people to swallow. And I'm guessing there may have been some negative reaction to that along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to learn how to kind of take the good with the bad in that sense? Or was that your personality? You were going to stick to what you believed in no matter what?
Well, in the early years, we didn't have a philosophy. We didn't know what we wanted. So like I said, there were many teams that came through our program that we learned from, and there were teams that we could have had more success with if I'd only known what to do. and the coaching staff had known what to do, how we could have done it better. I can't go back and look at those teams and say, wow, we really put you in a tough spot here. But the truth is they were instrumental in helping us learn how to become better coaches, how to become better managers, how to become more skilled in what we needed to teach our players. But when we finally had a breakthrough and looked at this, well, gosh, lo and behold, these three things are what we're looking for in an athlete. And it just became, it just clarified things for us. And the ones that were negative, the ones that, gosh, you never gave me a chance to show you what I can do, or they weren't the ones that were really ever going to learn anything, and they weren't interested in working. They wanted it given to them, and that's just not how it's going to work. So, and even not everybody is successful at a high level with bowling. We've had a lot of tremendous players come through our program, but they're tremendous people, and they're tremendous students when they were there. And if we did anything, we taught them that those qualities don't just apply to bowling, they apply to life. So if you work and learn and you got good team play skills and you're a collaborator, you're in demand when it comes to an occupation. When it comes to, I love it when I get a former player said, I went in and talked about my Wichita State College bowling experience. And that interviewer was really captivated by that and just thought, my gosh, that's not like anything I've ever heard. And they get the job. It's just, I get chills when I think about it, because that is what it's all about. We're trying to make these young men and women who come through our program better people through the circuit is bowling, college bowling, but really it's just showing them a path of how they could be exposed to a higher level of potential, what they could do at a higher level. They never knew they could do it. And that's probably, well, it isn't just probably, it's the most gratifying thing that I've ever experienced as a coach, is seeing people succeed in whatever, as family members and jobs and careers. These people that come out of our program that get it, whether they bowl or not, at a high level or not, they're successful in whatever they do. Look at Mark Buffa up in Canada, who runs Buffa Bowling. It's the biggest distributorship in the country of Canada, up in Montreal. Wildly successful. He works his butt off. He learns a crazy amount all the time. I'd like to think maybe just a tiny part of that came from our bowling program, and it inspired him to be better.
Sounds like more than just a tiny part, but that reminds me a lot of what one of my previous guests told me when I asked him about his experience at Wichita and what he learned. And I don't think I need to name him because everybody really knows who he is. Take a listen.
Well, he definitely taught me how to be a team player, because it was a shock quite a bit. My first year was very tough. I really wanted to give up after basically the first semester and go play baseball. I didn't think I was competing enough. I thought I was better than I was. And I learned the hard way I wasn't as good as I thought I was. And Gordon and Mark taught me a lot about life, how to live on my own, how to prepare, how to be a businessman, and basically everything I do to this day came from college.
Do some people need to be kind of, maybe, I don't know if this is the correct phrase, but broken down a little bit to be built back up even better?
Well, they need to be shown there's more to learn. I could say it negatively and say you haven't learned enough. You're not knowledgeable enough. No, there's more you don't know. And that realization when you're 17, 18 years old is hard to hear, especially if you've had a little bit of success. Sean was a handful when he came in, that's for sure. He was like a bronco bull. I mean, he was a bull in a china shop when it came to team play. So yeah, it was more just, here's team play, here's how we play at a high level. And he figured it out. He finally decided he figured it out. It's very gratifying to see a piece like that, obviously, because that was pretty accurate what he said. I think that's pretty close. But we have never looked at the sport and said we know it all. It's not about what we know. It's not about the coaches and what they know. We bring in the experts. We bring in the people. We were never afraid to bring Fred Borden in to talk about the physical game because he's the best. We weren't ever afraid to have Dean Hennitz in, who is the best with sports psychology, and he'd do team building weekend with our men and women's team. We'd have a series of educational classes where we delve into everything: ball dynamics, fitting and drilling, nutrition, an entire list of guest speakers, which are the best we could find. This wasn't egoic. This wasn't about Coach Lewis or Coach Henry or Coach Vadakin. Oh, we know it all. We don't know it all. But there's people out there we can bring in and house and pay a fee to, and we can give these athletes a heightened level of knowledge. Now, I think a lot of people, once again, don't see the forest for the trees. They have all these, we got another ed session today. Oh, Christ. And they got to go to this thing. It's like another academic class. But in hindsight, when they look back on it, they were exposed to something very special that they will never get anytime in their life, or they have to pay a tremendous amount of money to go out and be with these people to learn from them. But if you're committed to learning, like we are, we're going to bring in people that are going to give you the highest level knowledge.
Yeah. Another one was Steve, who is, a birthday boy today. I should say happy birthday.
Yeah,
I get the impression he doesn't want a lot of people to know that because he doesn't have it listed on his Facebook page. So, it's Steve's birthday. So happy birthday, Steve. But here's what he said when I asked him something similar.
I felt like I had a solid, physical game going in, but I didn't really have a lot of the different tools. I didn't have maybe the different ability to recognize what's happening on the lanes and then change either a release or a strategy or something, or maybe I just wasn't even willing to change. I was just thinking, no, I can make this work. I don't need to. So it kind of expanded and opened my mind to a lot of different things.
Got to be open-minded to take it all in, right?
Right. And of course, Steve works for Storm Bowling, which we think the world of. And Storm is a longtime sponsor of our college team. And once again, we bring in multiple people on lane play, one of them being Jim Callahan. We think Jim Callahan is one of the best in the business of matching a ball to the lane and seeing it. We brought in Rick Benoit many years. Rick is another extraordinary. He's just extraordinary. He was somebody that taught pros with the Brunswick staff for many years, and those people were very successful under his tutelage. So again, another experiential coach who's learned a lot from being out on tour, and we brought him in because we wanted to expose that knowledge to our athletes. We bring in our professional bowlers who've been out on tour. And what have you learned? Is it a plus to be able to take professional bowlers and give those college players some of their knowledge? Well, yeah, if I can pick up on one thing, that's going to make me better at the college level. So again, it's teaching, training, ed sessions, learning, working. That's all it is. And the lucky ones that grasp it, they get to be better during those 4 years of college, and maybe they continue to get better forever going forward. Chris Barnes is an example. If he learned anything at our program, he learned how to learn. That kind of sounds contradictory, but I learned that I need to learn. I don't know it all. Sean, the same way. You don't know it all. Well, maybe I don't know it all even when I'm out on tour. Well, duh, that's right. So I better be seeking out anything and everything I can possibly learn to be able to play the game at a high level, at the higher level. That's why these guys are successful. They're great learners.
Does it help, as, through the years, you bring in more and more new players to have them see guys like, let's say like Chris Prather, because I've got it pulled up right here, that, he's succeeding on tour and he says, gosh, Coach V changed the course of my life forever and put me on the path that I'm on now. It was a rocky road full of struggles, but he knew I was capable of great things, and he kept his eye on me and guided me into this wonderful career. And he says he owes his life and a lot of his success to you and Coach Lewis and Wichita State, and that he wouldn't be where he is without you guys. I know what you said earlier about, the individual gratification and all that stuff, but isn't that a good way to get people to believe?
Yeah, we expose them to a lot of things, and it's their ability to grasp it or to not grasp it. Like I said, I guess the coaches have control over who they bring in and what we expose them to, but we're not arrogant enough to believe we know everything about the game, but we know people that do. So it's an educational based bowling program, and we're gonna expose them to the education. So I guess, yeah, we were the ones that plan it, but we're not the only ones that they're getting taught by. That, not even close.
Sure. You had several years in there where you kind of took me through and said, okay, I was the rec center manager and the coach at the same time until
Yeah.
96, but
Right.
you were also two-time Team USA during those years. You were winning Eagles during those years. How did you keep, I guess, sharp as a competitor while also coaching, while also running the business?
Wow. Looking back on, I don't know how I did that. Because it just seems incredible. It's a blur now, Fef. I mean, it's just such a blur because we were raising young kids, and I'm amazingly indebted to my wife, Cindy, because, we had right in the middle of all that stuff, we had little kids, and we're trying to pick them up and move them around. And we had a very supportive grandmother in that process that watched kids all the time. And we still bowled leagues. We were competing on weekends. If we weren't at a college tournament or in a college fundraising event or in some sort of educational weekend session, we were doing something else. Every weekend was full of something, and it was just crazy. I think back to the two Eagles in 1988 and 89. How was I any good at bowling? Well, I'll tell you, I have a person that bowled on this Chilton vending team that we had some success a couple of years, and that guy was Mark Lewis. And I owe everything to him as a bowler because he led us off. He's just really sharp. I mean, this guy reads a lane like no other. And I bowled like fourth in a lot of these years or these teams. And he'd tell me what to do, and I just went and did it. So how cool is that? I just have to make a shot. I don't have to second guess anything. I just got to go up and make the move and make the shot. Lewis was, I don't want to flatter him too much, but he's just good at communicating and speaking a language that I liked and understood. So it was more his success. He might not have as much success in that guinea pig role, but I was able to help our team if I trusted his communication, his adjustments, and just did them. That 89 team event was a special one. I mean, it's one of the highlight. It's the highlight of my bowling career, to be honest. And yeah, I got to bowl Team USA a couple of years, and we went to a world championship in Caracas in '83 and some a zone tournament actually in Wichita in '89, but also in '89 was the ABC championship in our hometown, in our convention center for 40 lanes. And we had won the team all events the year before in Jacksonville. So as a promotional venture, we were asked by ABC if we could bowl the Joe Bowler squad, the opening squad of the 1989 ABC tournament. So we said, yeah, we'd do it. And you've heard about the 1989 ABC tournament.
I actually just put the link to that into the live chat in case people want to see it.
Great.
Firsthand.
And that was where the scores went through the roof. What the backstory there is, we were both on the United States team in 1989, and that was a strict qualifier to get on the team. Lewis had been on it and was in the Olympics in 1988 in Seoul, South Korea, a huge accomplishment, and made the team again in 1989. And somehow, some way, I was able to make the team the same year. Here, two teammates make the team in different ways, and we were both on it. And we went to the Olympic Training Center back then. Fred Borden, that was the first year he coached the team. Fred coached in 1989, and here we are, coaches ourselves, and we're with Fred Borden, who is just a treasure trove of information. And we stayed up 2-3 in the morning every night for about 8 days, He got no sleep. All we did is eat and learn and bowl. That's all we did. And a few days after we got back from Colorado Springs, that Chilton vending team, Lewis and I are on it. We bowled the ABC tournament. I mean, I was razor sharp after that week. That's that's as sharp as razor. I'm a dull razor, but that's as sharp as I can get as a bowler. I think Lewis would agree with that. And we went out there in the first game out of the blocks, the first game, like 1242. And you know, it's historic stuff. No one had ever shot 1200 in that tournament up until that point. Our paper did a great job of publicizing the event, and that we were going to be featured in this opening squad, and they won the team all events the previous year. And so we had a setup there with bleachers. I'm saying there's probably 2,000 or 3,000 seats up there, and that place was packed. We had 2,500 people there to watch us bowl. Do you know how rare that is as a bowler, to have a crowd that's there to watch you? It happens all the time in every other sport, right? But in our sport, it doesn't lend itself to large spectator capacity. And we shoot 1242 the first game. And it was just, everything fell down. It was just nuts. And that was the year they had ideal scoring condition. The surface topography was perfect. Back ends were unbelievably tight. So you had unbelievable pin action from the sidewalls. So then we shot a couple more 1,100 games, and there had never been a 3,300 ever shot in the ABC tournament at that point in 1989. And we had 3,481. And at the end of that, I didn't want it to end. The crowd was cheering for us. I felt like a person in a regular sport that has crowd support cheering for you. It was just so special. I can't. Anybody that has ever been in that role in another sport gets it, but we don't get that opportunity very much in our sport. And the crowd rose up and gave us a standing ovation. It was like, are you kidding me? And so we had to take a bow out on the approach. It was just insane. And a 100-day tournament, that score held up and won the event. There were a lot of big scores in that tournament, but ours was the highest score in the team event. So it's a special moment. It's kind of one of those, maybe our lives are we were in the right place at the right time. I don't know, but we were then coming off that week, as sharp as we were. The game just seemed simple to us. I had Lewis's communication tell me what to do, and I just followed him, and they all fell down a lot.
Great when that happens, though. I mean,
it's awesome. Tremendous fun.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, you're building up this college program, you're having more and more success, and you become the first program to three-peat as ITC champions. Mm-hmm. And not only do you do it once, you do it twice. Was that a big thing for you? Was that a goal for you? I kind of remember watching documentaries about Vince Lombardi, and he, they had a chance to three-peat and they didn't. And then later on they did. And the former players are like, he didn't really talk about it the first time, but the second time he wouldn't let you forget it. That was his goal.
Yeah, I think those are very special times. Maybe it's just in sport generally. It's just a very difficult accomplishment to do that. And I don't think our sport's any different in that respect. And it's just incredibly difficult to get through the season and get in a sectional and advance out of a sectional with 15 other teams and be able to go through the minefield of match play with each of those teams and then get to a telecast. So you've got a shortened format there and get all the way through that and actually have success. It's there has to be some good fortune in there. Yeah, you have to be trained, you have to be ready, but overall, I think some of those teams, and you're talking about our men's team twice with the three-peat, some of those men's teams would not be denied. It was, they just made the decision to see how, at some point in the season, they made the decision. I think you talked to Matt McNeil about it. We're going to see how good we can get. We're going to see how great we can become. It wasn't my decision. It was their decision. I just simply guided them and said, hey, when we've had championships, this is how it works. Somebody on that team or the team collectively has to decide we're going to go all in. We're going to see how good we can get. And we're going to go compete on the weekends. We're going to throw ourselves into our classes. We're going to do a superhuman job of being as good as we possibly can. Now, why is that scary? Why don't people do that? Well, you could lose.
Yep.
You could lose. You could give it all you got and you come up short. You don't win. Well, what more could I have done? I mean, is there anything else I could have done? If you give it all you got, no. So if that's the fear, that's why people don't do that. That's why teams don't do that, is because, hey, there's always next year if I'm only a sophomore or junior. I know inside I can work harder, but I don't. So those teams, a lot of those teams made the decision, we're not gonna keep from winning this. We're gonna win this thing. And they just made a decision to be great. And that's what caused them to win.
Yeah. When I talked to Wagner about you, like I said, he had the comments before about the Duke and the Alabama, but he brought it down to this level. He said that you were always there with a kind word of encouragement after your guys beat his in a bracket match or at nationals. He said you were always complimentary as Whitewater continued to improve, and that you sent him congratulatory messages after being named Coach of the Year, named after you, and even one after winning ITCs. He went on to say that as a coach, he tried to model a lot of what he did after your processes. He said he figured if it could bring your program 20 national titles, it had to bring us one. Do you ever worry that, oh my gosh, we're kibitzing a little too much, we're telling them a little too much of the ingredients in the secret sauce here and creating a better opponent that we might not be able to beat?
Well, I think imitation, what do they say? Imitation is the highest form of flattery. So I'm very flattered that that's what they attempt to do. It's Dr. Dean Hennitz would probably say, you tell everybody anything, they've still got to go do it. And that's probably true. So I'm not saying we're an open book or anything like that, but we really are open in the sense of what worked for us. I've been telling you that, work ethic, learning, loyalty, that works. Decision made by the team to get it done that year. That's not easy to do, so it's a recipe for success. And I am flattered that others would try to emulate us, but that's no different than me going to try to look at North Carolina basketball. What do you do? I didn't get a call from Roy Williams saying, what are you doing? Looking at our basketball team, you're a bowling coach. What can you learn? Well, there's a lot that you do that I can learn from. So, it's cool. It's really cool to hear someone has done that. And what we do is not going to work for everybody else, sometimes. But it's nice to hear it works every once in a while for somebody else. That's great. It's not an easy path. It's a path that causes. I get that every once in a while. Boy, you've got it easy. You get all these good bowlers or this or that. We were just like Sean's program. We had to work incredibly hard at it with what we had, which was mostly local players, until we had a little success, and then we were able to attract people from other places, which is wonderful. But at the same time, those people were challenged mightily when they came in, just because they were decent, like Sean or like Chris Barnes or whoever. You don't know it all, guys. You've got to get better, and that was the challenge: is are you going to do it? Are you going to see how good you can become?
Sure. The last national championship that you had as a coach on the men's side was in 2015, and I rewatched the show. And, kind of sat there and watched you guys have what I would kind of describe as a victory lap at the end, where it's all locked up. You get Francois up there. He doesn't even need count. You've won this thing, and then you can put in a sub and, and ride this thing out to the Helmer Cup. That's got to be a tremendous feeling, knowing that they're not all like that.
No, they're certainly not all like that. Every title is special. Every title is a different story. I go way back to 1987, and we had Rick Steelsmith and Justin Romick on the team, and these guys went on to quite a bit of success on the PBA tour. And of course, Rick coaches our men's team right now. He does a wonderful job. One of the very best coaches in the world, in my opinion. But gosh, these guys were real laid back all year. You couldn't even get a pulse on them most of the year. I mean, they were just, flat, just dead out there. Just went through the motions. They won tournaments, but you wouldn't know they won or lost. They had no reaction. I think they all wonder what would happen if we won the national tournament. What would occur? Would we get excited then? And it went down to the 9th and 10th frame on a brutal condition in Omaha. Justin somehow threw a shot and hit the pocket and struck. And Rick, who was one of the greatest clutch players we ever had in our program, could strike the first ball in the 10th and shut out University of Houston. And he went up and whistled one down there and flushed it, and we won. And that group of guys that didn't show any emotion all year were just absolutely beside themselves. It was so amazing to watch. I remember a reporter talked to me. I have no idea what I said to him. I have no idea what I said. I was on this euphoria, and I wish I could tape record that, because what I seemed to have said to him, it must have been the most important thing I ever said in my life, because it felt like it was, but I have no idea what I said. And because I was just on cloud 9 there for about, 15, 20 minutes, where I was just amazed at what I just watched. So yeah, that's one that came down to the wire, and they don't all work out, like you said, in 2015, where you've got it locked up. So, yep.
In 4 years later, you announced that you were retiring. Tell me about that decision. What went into it? What was it like to walk away from it? Because I'm guessing that when you put that many years in, and I've heard you say in other interviews that, when it's a passion, you kind of forget about the time that it takes.
Mm-hmm.
You just love what you do and you do it. To just leave it has got to be kind of tough, doesn't it?
It is tough. It's still tough. That's when you have that much of your life wrapped up around your career, it's in large part, we were able to kind of carve out our own niche here. There wasn't anything like Wichita State bowling at the time we started to rise to prominence. I kind of tend to think there still isn't anything quite like it, and it's a unique experience. And I just felt like, I guess at that time, that like a lot of other people that reach the end of their career, so to speak, that it was time to switch directions. I had 2 young grandkids from my daughter and her husband, and they were moving to Wichita to build a house and be back close to home. They were living in Seattle, and that happened later late that year of 2019 and early 2020, and we've been professional grandparents, or maybe high-level amateur grandparents, maybe is a better way to say it. So, but that's it's just something that just felt right at the time, and it wasn't necessarily. It's never ever really ever been about me. It was really about opportunity to put people in place that would do a marvelous job. Holly Harris, as the women's team coach, she was one of these great student athletes that just continues to learn and learn and learn. And she's just outstanding in her job. I knew we wouldn't have her much longer. She's just too good. Someone's going to snatch her up, and she's going to be coaching somewhere else. Rick Steelsmith was available. I knew how good he was. He was extraordinary. Mark Lewis was not at retirement age. And I just felt like if my superiors would listen to me and say, these 3 people, if you consider them, it's your decision, I think would be the best case for us moving forward. And thank goodness they did listen to me, and they did put those people in place. Mark is the director of the bowling program, and Rick and Holly as the men and women's coaches. And I'm pretty thrilled with what happened after that. They're doing a hell of a lot better than I was, to be honest with you. The first year, they were the first year coaching full time. They were the number 1 ranked teams in the country, men and women, going into the sectional. And then, of course, the sectional was canceled due to COVID, and the national tournament subsequently didn't happen either. And then the next year, they swept both tournaments, both men and women. And then the third year, they were ranked number 1 again for both teams. And They get all the way to the championship match with both teams. I can't tell you how hard that is to do. It's one thing to have a three-peat, as you mentioned, but to get both teams in that position, I don't know how to compare that to anything. That's not North Carolina basketball. That's not the University of Connecticut's women's basketball team, or Tennessee's great teams with, Pat Summitt. It's just remarkable that happened. So I felt really justified, really gratified that the right people are in place and still are. So it just felt like, timing wise, it was a great opportunity for me, but also for the program. And, you talk about succession plans and you talk about leaving a legacy. More than anything, I just want the program to continue to be relevant. I want it to be successful. I don't want it to slip in stature. I want it to stay at the highest level it can. And I saw opportunity there. And luckily, my superiors agreed with that and put those people in place. So I'm eternally grateful to have that happen. Now, who knows going forward how everything will work out. But right now, it's been good, Fev. It's been really good for our bowling program.
Yeah. Are there opportunities for you to, I don't know, get in there, dip your toe in, check out practices, cheer them on at tournaments, anything like that these days?
Well, it's we have been, I think I shared with you off before we started the show, it's been my daughter's family lived with us for 20 months while they were building a house. 3-year-old, a 5-year-old. The 5-year-old has special needs, and he requires a lot of attention. So it's more than just babysitting; we're caregiving for him, and he's also got a history of immunosuppression, or at least been on a ventilator. I mean, he's had lung issues, he's had sickness issues. So the COVID situation doesn't go away for someone like our grandson. So in order for us to caregive for him, we have to be fairly safe ourselves. So we can't just do crazy things, right? So Zoom calls like we're doing here, I didn't have to wear a mask. So that's that's a good thing. So no, we've been very involved in that caregiving for him. And that's it's been a joy to have him live with us. It truly has. It's been a joy to be able to hang out with our grandkids. I just got done babysitting our granddaughter, that's very fulfilling for me. Our son will probably have kids going down the road here and not too much longer, so we'll be grandparents again. So it's a very different mission I'm on, but I don't know if it's probably more important for all the time I didn't spend with my own kids because I was doing everything on earth. I get to spend more time with at least their grandkids and our son and daughter a little bit. So that's awesome.
Yeah, and certainly a little more important than bowling. A little.
I think so.
Yeah. So you've seen at least one episode of this show before, and you know how we do this off the sheet thing at the end. And that's where I ask you to challenge somebody else to be on a future episode. Doesn't have to be the greatest bowler in the world, but somebody who has a passion for the sport and a unique story to tell, which we all do. So Gordon Vadakin, who would you like to challenge to be on a future episode of Bowling with the Fat?
Yeah, God, I have no clue. No, I've thought about this a little bit. I really think a good guest for you would be Mark Lewis. And I say that not just because he's probably one of my best friends, but he's our Olympic player from 1988 and the Summer Olympic Games in Seoul, South Korea. I know all of us want to get back in the Olympics. His story is just incredible about that Olympic year and competing in bowling's really only modern day opportunity to be as either demonstration or exhibition sport in 1988. He's got a terrific story to tell. And I think he's got great ideas about how we can continue to push in that direction and reach that goal. Of course, he's two-time Team USA. He was on our very first national championship team way back in 1980. In addition to those, he has 3 Eagles with a doubles championship with Mark Jensen, another one of our teammates. So he's a consummate team player. He's incredibly sharp and intellectual, and he'd be a no-brainer. Others, I guess I'm staying close to home here, but Rick Steelsmith has a great story too. Several PBA championships and was kind of a can't miss guy back in 1988 or 89, and shoulder injury setting back is pretty well documented. And but he's put his resources into coaching, and he's just awesome. He's just a terrific coach. So those would be a couple. I was going to recommend Dasha until I found out you'd already had her on, and you've had Sydney Brummett on too, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and Sydney's an awesome one. Clara Guerrero, from Colombia is another one of our products, and I think she'd be a tremendous. There's a lot of them, Fef. We've crossed paths with a lot of people over the years that are extraordinary. I mentioned some of the educators like Fred Borden or Dean Hennitz have been anchors in our educational program at Wichita State for many years. So I don't want to bombard you with too many here, but Fred is 80 some years old now, and man, this guy is a dynamo even now. So, you'd have to go longer than an hour with him.
Well, awesome. Fair enough. I mean, like I told you before we went on, I'm not bumping up against some other TV show. We've got the time as long as our guests do. But some great suggestions there. Coach L, Coach Steele Smith, Fred Borden, Clara Guerrero. I'd be honored to have any of you on a future episode. So if you're watching this and you're interested, please let me know. You can find me on Facebook, or you can email me bowlingwiththefef@yahoo.com. So our next live stream coming up Wednesday, July 13th, Tyler Chamberlain, another coach and player kind of combined, although at a different level. He's the head coach at Eau Claire Memorial High School, bowler here in the Chippewa Valley of Wisconsin. We will hear his story a week from tonight. Coach V, it has been an honor and a pleasure, and all that other stuff. I really appreciate you spending the time with us, and hoping that we somehow may have done most of your story justice.
Well, that's probably more so than I deserve. Let me put it that way. You're awesome at what you do, Fef, and I can't help but thank you for asking me in the first place. This is a treat. I never got to do anything quite like this, so this is really wonderful. I'm glad you have the show and you're able to bring old, washed-up bowling coaches on like me.
Well, it was certainly my pleasure, and if there are any other old, washed-up bowling coaches, send them my way, because we love them all here. But that'll do it for tonight. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you again next week.